And so nobody took me to the temple. So I'm going to tell you the story that the Devi told to me after having her two sisters, and I hope you're following all these details in and out of stories, and yes, you are, took me to Bodhanath, which is not far from where I was in Chhatrapati in Kathmandu, to go through a kind of arched, beautiful entrance to where there was a stupa, the great stupa, big, round, white, painted mound, like a huge skirt of a mother. And on top of it, the huge painted eyes looking out, and there's a way to walk and circumambulate. And I had been there many times, irresistibly there, but I had never noticed what the sisters of the Devi took me to see. In a small, arched, stone, little teeny miniature temple in the wall was the statue of a deity. Unlike the usual Devi statues who are kind of thin and alluring and full-breasted and wearing jewels, she was kind of matronly, knees open. Around her hair, which was pulled together, she had a wreath of laurel leaves with a rosette on top. Her hair hung down underneath it, over her breasts, and on her left breast was a baby sitting with its hands in Anjali. And all around her feet and on her sort of luminous, abundant skirts were children. I just had never noticed her. The two sisters had brought rice and had me place rice as an offering. Ian explained to me later that of all the deities that are supplicated and given offerings of lights and incense and flowers and food, the only thing that's given to this particular deity is food. Early the next morning, after her initial prayers and healing, an abundance of people who waited on line behind the goose that was always by the door outside the entrance to the Devi's house, she told me the story. Turned out she had a cell phone under her throne that she sat on and called Ian Baker. She told me the second half of the story of this deity who was named Hariti Ma. Years later, reading a book by Miranda Shaw on the goddesses of Nepal and India, it's a very supple chapter about Hariti Ma. And what's very rare was I was able to read the story before the story that somehow illuminated the life story of Hariti Ma that was told to me. So I'm going to start with that story. We all know that really the beginning of every story is not the beginning of the story. Something must have happened to bring it to that place where things are out of order, where something has to change, where a hero or heroine, animal, plant, being has to go out in the world and transmute the world or retrieve something that's missing. Here's the backstory. There was a peasant girl who was pregnant. And before giving birth, She wanted to climb down the mountainside from where she lived to go to the small city of Rajagriha and to sell milk she carried in a bucket so she would have money when her baby was born. There was some kind of festival, a celebration, and she was coerced to dance all night with the promise that she would be given money for the milk. And she was exhausted. And she was given far less than it was worth. And on her way home, in extreme exhaustion and agony, she fell. She lost the child and began to die. And other deities, protectors arrived to her. But she was so enraged at the loss of her child that right before death, she vowed to take revenge on all the mothers and fathers of Rajagriha who should experience the suffering that she felt. And then she died. How many lifetimes passed, I don't know. But she was reborn in Rajagriha to an ordinary family. She had an older brother whose translation of his name was all happiness young man. And she was given the name Abhirati, all joyful girl. And literally, like most of us, the memory of her past lives lay buried. But it happened when she was 7 or 8 years old that both her parents died. And the grief she felt triggered the memory of the vow that lay buried inside her to take revenge. And she went wild with angst and fury. And anytime she saw anyone who was happy, particularly a mother and a child, it fueled the fire of a rage that flowered into vengeance. Her brother attempted everything he could to keep his sister calm, to assuage this incredible anger and misery inside of her. But nothing worked. So to protect the city where he lived and to protect his sister, he married her to a very powerful Rakshasa in a remote village. A Rakshasa is a flesh-eating demon, devious, manipulative, powerful. And rather than this marriage calming her down, it actually inflamed her consuming sense of vengeance. Now, it wasn't an ordinary marriage, obviously. And she gave birth, it is said, to 500 children. And she trained them to hate, to destroy, to follow instructions, to steal, to murder. And they already had in their genes the flesh-eating passion. She had an army of children. And at some point, she led them all, holding her youngest infant in her arms, back to the city of Rajagriha. And there she lived in a house. During the day, as we know if we know about Rakshasas, the sun undoes their power. So at night, She went out with her band of demonic children, 499 of them, and ravaged, stole, destroyed, maimed, tortured, caused such agony that the entire city lived in fear. No one could stop her, even the king and his army. You can see why I think this story is relevant today. One woman heard that the Buddha at that time was teaching not far from Rajagriha. So she thought everything that she had heard about his unordinary, extra unordinary compassion, he might have a plan and be able to stop this young woman and her children. They no longer called her Abhirata or joyful. They named her Hariti, which means thief, because she stole happiness. She stole children. The Buddha contemplated the story that he heard, and he devised a plan. It is said that at night, while Hariti and her 499 children were ravishing the city, he snuck unseen into her house and stole her little infant from the basket where he slept, took that baby in his arms back to where he was living, and through his prescience and his own power, placed the child hidden under his begging bowl. Now, Hariti, when she returned and found that her infant was gone, she panicked. After all, she was a mother. She searched the house. She searched the compound. She searched everywhere. And when the sun rose, regardless of losing her power, panicked, grief stricken, she began to roam the streets of the city and search for her child everywhere. Not finding her child, she tore at her hair, at her skin, she wept. She began asking everyone, even those whose children she had caused demise, if they had seen her baby. Many people fled. Others said no, they had no idea. Some even felt sorry for her for the extremity of her grief and loss. And as it happened, as it does in life, she found herself suddenly face to face with the very woman who had gone to the Buddha. And she asked her, and that woman said that the only one who might know where her baby was the all-compassionate one, and led her to the house where the Buddha was dwelling. When she went inside, she was shaking, she was crying, she could barely breathe. And the Buddha welcomed her, sat her down on a chair in which she wailed and begged to know if he could find her child. Very slowly, the Buddha began to speak to her, asked her to describe the baby, which she did, asked to describe the feelings of love of a mother, which she did, and then asked her to tell him how she suffered at the loss of her child. And slowly, between breaths. Hariti described the heartache, the agony, the skin deep pain of loss, of not having a child, of not finding her baby. And the Buddha, it is said to her, your suffering is one. Now imagine the suffering of all those mothers and fathers whose child you and your army have stolen or murdered. For the first time in her entire life, she suddenly felt, imagined the pain of another. And with that realization, so piercing, she saw the consequences of her rage. It is said that Hariti fell to her knees and begged to be punished, saying she deserved to lose her child, she deserved to lose everything for what she had caused. And then the Buddha lifted his begging bowl and returned the baby to his mother. And Hariti Ma begged to be punished. But the Buddha said, first, that he would feed and care for all her children, that they would live in monasteries and be trained in compassion. And as for her, having realized the consequence of her rage, her all-consuming vengeance, hatred, ideas, and bias, having realized it so thoroughly that there was no one other than her who could become the protector of children, the protector of mothers, the protector against evil and greed and hatred. He changed her name from Hariti to Hariti Ma, which is translated, as far as I know, to she who steals the suffering of our world. It is said that she was also sent to a monastery to live with nuns. And that even then, and all through history until now, in great monasteries, when the tables are set to feed all those, including lay people, monks, nuns, great teachers, there is a table, a plate at the end of the table, set out for Hariti Ma. And that the offerings of statues remembering her, embodying her, are in front of all great stupas, the bodies of Buddha, the body of compassion, and temples, and many homes. And the offering given is food. The Devi sent her sisters out that afternoon. They brought back yellow flowers and saffron and all kinds of colored rice and wreaths. She made a beautiful ceremony for myself, two friends who were also at the Vajra Hotel at the time, who began coming over in the afternoons, and Ian, the translator, a blessing on all our bodies, everyone. No single person excluded in this world does not have a great jewel or the tiny spark of all-consuming compassion. May you retell this story 1,000 times and steal away the suffering of those who have forgotten. Mm. That's that. So I would love it if you would like to, I'm going to put this on gallery view, and if you had any if you had any thoughts, if you have any associations, any questions, or know more about this story than I do, which is altogether possible, it would be so wonderful to hear from you. You have to put a little, like on the reactions, put a little hand up so I could find you. Or if I can't find you, just speak out. Oh, I see some wonderful friends and storytellers here. Heather Forrest talking about compassion and compassionate stories. Eleanor Benjamin. Poonam is here. How wonderful. Maria Labanda. Oh, so many people. Alistair. Christopher Anderson. And people I don't know, should know, will know. Majita, there you are. And of course, Eric, who I have so many memories. I met Eric, I think he was 17, skinny and carrying an Indian instrument over his shoulder, wanting somehow, maybe that's a past life story, we don't know, to become an epic singer in Manhattan. So, oh, please join in the conversation. How was that to hear that story? Ah. Yes, Shukrita, hi.
Yeah, hello, Laura. What a powerful performance, as always, Laura. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. And, what a powerful story of transformation. A lot of layers here. I mean, about, of course, about rebirth, about how, things are passed on generation to generation, and we don't know why we react in certain ways and how our embedded sort of patterns always can come up in this lifetime. And the very gentle hand of compassion of somebody listening to you and just being able to unburden in that way, and that divine touch in some way which just can break those chains and transform the human spirit is lovely. It's truly lovely. So
Oh,
thank you.
I mean, compassion isn't always gentle, but it definitely is piercing. And even if it doesn't work, it's worth our aspiration because we have no idea. Like telling a story like this into the world.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shukrita.
Thank
It's
you,
nice
Laura.
to see you.
Nice to
Chris,
see you, Laura.
thank you. Christopher, hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. I was deeply moved, and I loved how you set it up with how talking about your own biography, and how and which is it gave me courage to continue and to and bring my own life into it. The I mean, it's to me the mythologically the gift is in the wound, and so for me to admit, how I've been eaten by life, and yet also the huge thing in this story is there is a community concordance. There is a community heart and a community mind, that then I can be brought true. Uh, 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 to my gift and how I can belong and participate. So delicious. Thank you so much.
More about what you mean by community. I wasn't sure what you're including. I would love to hear that.
Well, I think in the society that I grew up in, that I'm in, we tend to pathologize. Your lovely story about the pain of your mother and then acting out, stealing. The wise people of the village would be watching. In some of the old villages, it was the job of the elders to keep a spiritual brief for each of the young people and to watch them. And when they got into trouble, which Michael Meade, the mythologist, calls the good trouble, when they got into initiatory trouble, you don't abandon them, you don't pathologize them, you don't throw them away. Then the old people go, huh, do you think that he's ready to hear this story? And then I think he is. Okay, who's going to tell him? Okay, and then it's utmost you don't humiliate anyone. You, by accident, you sit next to that young person during a village event and you start to tell a story where suddenly that person will recognize his dilemma in the story and then see what the next steps are to come back into alignment with the community love and community belonging. Rather than the story you told of being, no, I'm in a leather jacket, I'm stealing, I'm, not understanding the pain. So the job of the initiator, is to just to try to control the intensity of your experience, so you don't kill yourself, and to explain what's going on and what's the next step. You're in this initiatory.
I want to interrupt for a second, Christopher, because it's very interesting. When I was first telling stories, I was at, I think it was Lawrence College, way upstate New York, on a radio show. And it was a sort of early radio show about storytelling. And the radio announcer invited a young woman who was teaching, who was a professor, African professor, to talk about her experiences. And she very much, praised the story I told, etc. And then said that sometimes, as you're describing, in a community, a story is told again and again to a child that is behaving really badly. And if they can find themselves in that story, they can internally shift. And she said, but then sometimes when they can't, the worst punishment they have is to set that child outside the community so that he feels the isolation or she feels the isolation. And but of course they are not abandoned completely. But I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. you know, uh, thank you. Yes, Majida, always nice to see your face.
Hi, good morning. I'm in California. I woke up at 6 in the morning to hear Laura. And thank you, Chennai Storytelling Festival, for everything. So the story is very meaningful for me. The first moment that touched my heart was when you told the guard, let the man go. And then hearing all that the 11-year-old went through, I remembered myself and what was offered to me and what would have been a warmer offering. And then the story goes to a point where I felt more understanding of what's going on in parts of the world. I felt compassion for one side, for the other side, and I realized that the stories that we tell and we hear, they're very formative. And it took me to generations back and reaffirmed my belief in reincarnation. So it soothed a level of being angry, a level of being almost very stuck in saying that one thing, one side is right, the other side is not. It softened my heart, and feeling the mother was so strong. Thank you so much, Laura.
You know, Majida, I've always wanted to ask, where were you born?
My I was born in Brazil because my dad is Palestinian who left his place to seek another life,
Mm.
and so he married a person from another culture. So we are bicultural kids, and we've learned to navigate in several environments.
Mm.
And my
Mm.
dad was so generous to tell us since we were kids, we're all brothers. People think differently, but we're all brothers and sisters.
Oh, aren't you lucky?
Yeah.
We love what you're saying, and they're so, I mean, I every day I hear from different people, different sides they're taking in all of the awful conflicts that are raging in our world. And aren't you going to be on my side? Aren't you going to be on my side? And actually, I can find, I can't take sides. I do feel, um, upset with actions that very powerful countries take, in supporting devastation and suffering, and for what end, I'm not quite sure. But I just can't take a side these days other than the side of love and but intelligence too. Once I've told this story 3 or 4 times, and I do see your hand, Sudha. Once in a conference on compassion in Monterrey, Mexico, the main speaker was the Dalai Lama. And the conference was created by these two women who had been so horrified and had lost family in a great massacre of a cartel that came in and killed like 148 people. So it was sort of this fabulous 4-day event, a lot of peacemakers and so forth. And then finally the talk of the Dalai Lama, it was like the central tentpole of the event. And while he was talking in this 9,000 seat arena, a woman stood up. She was so angry at him. She was so furious that even though there were like 9,000 people and she was like an M&M in this whole, huge thing, you could feel her. And the Dalai Lama had a microphone brought to her. And she raged and she said, how can you talk about compassion when there are terrorists and murderers? She went on and on and on and on. And, you could feel yourself like, yeah, wait a minute, what is this about, by taking a pill or something, listening to him? And then he said in this voice, he has very deep voice, and he said something like, I do not condone violence of any kind. But he said, I do have compassion. And I just burst into tears because I had never been able to pull those threads and see both those things at once. So thank you. Majida, thank you for your father and mother. Sudha.
Hello, Laura.
Hi.
That was such an intense and very deeply moving performance. Congratulations and thank you for that. As I was listening to your story, I thought, why don't we go and approach the Devi and ask her to do something about what's happening in Gaza. I think we've become immune to it after a point. Every now and then we are torn by the kind of stories we hear, children being separated, mothers, pregnant mothers, the torture they're being put through. And I don't know what the bodies like the UN are doing. What is it that we can do? I can only think of Reiki and maybe somebody like the Devi who can work a miracle or calm this whole all the tempers down.
Or
What are
maybe
your
somebody like you.
sorry?
Somebody like you.
I'm
You
too
know,
small
the
to
world
make.
is truly interdependent.
Yes.
Then any action with the aspiration of sanity
Mm.
and compassion that increases the possibility in the world. So, I went back 18 years after I had met the Devi. I went back and I searched for her and I couldn't find her
Oh.
because the whole neighborhood there in Chhatrapati had been changed and I didn't find her. And I thought, well, now I have to rely on myself.
Hmm. Very true.
But I think that caring about the suffering that's occurring in all of the immense, there's so many wars, they don't even make it into the newspaper now.
Mm.
So I think inside ourselves, the more that we choose not to focus on, to be intelligent about the horrors that are happening, and to attempt to do just what we're doing, the good fortune of being able to be a storyteller. A lot of us believe it's the story and the text and the meaning of the text. And if we say that we should be good, then everybody would be good. For me, and this is what I'm going to talk about next week in my workshop, I think that there's another more subtle and even profound ability that we have in the telling of the story, which is to engage people so that they actually come back to their body when they're listening. Imagination is a great bridge, not only for visualization, but if you're imagining, then you're in your body. If you're fantasizing, you can be out of your body. But if you're imagining, it's an act of internal replacement of one thing after another internally, then that activity brings us back to the body, and you could become everyone in this story. You could really be both Rakshasa and the baby and the Buddha and the woman on the street and the guard in the first story. That's the alchemy. And we've been taught to believe in text and the story. And of course, that's important. But what is occurring and what can happen, that even if it happens to one person, is of immense power. So I think maybe I sound really foolish because I can't stop what's going on in the world, but I can not put a log on the fire.
Thank you.
Eleanor.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, amazing story. Everything is connected, of course. But as you came to the end of the story and described the table, the long, long table with the place at the end, I just kept seeing that table start to encircle the world into every community where we were all struggling to make sure where we are, people are getting enough to eat with the food banks and all the things that we're having to do at this parlous time we're in. And I just keep wanting to see that table go round and round the world with places for people. Thank you, Laura.
Well, you imagined it, and therefore, in the realm, it is happening. And I know how much you love to eat good, beautiful food.
Ron just brought me in a lovely cinnamon bun.
Eleanor is a wonderful storyteller and singer, and living in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And her husband is a great connoisseur of wines and good food. So once a year, they come to New York for musical concerts, opera, and then I get to go out with them to eat. So anyway, thank you for all the wonderful work that you do on behalf of storytellers, Eleanor.
It's not very much, Laura.
That's not true.
I do archival stuff. It's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it.
Yes. Moira. Hi, Moira.
Yeah, hi Laura. I'm in Munich, Germany, and thanks for your story. And sometimes the comments and the dialogue afterwards, excuse me, are as precious as the story itself and what it triggers. I'd like to ask your permission to put a link in the chat. I got the link to a poem by Rabbi Irvin Keller, he's called. You know that one? It's called Taking Sides. And I got it from America. I'd like to give it back because that's exactly what you said. I mean, we are expected also here to take sides for this or for that. And he said, there's only one side I am going to take, and that's the one of peace and against violence. And this, for me, it's a wonderful poem. So if you like, may I put the link into the
I
chat?
think everybody would love it. Yes, thank you. And also,
Yeah.
just put a beautiful poem on as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And just as a reply of when that whole mess started on October 7th, it was a feeling of, like for many of us, of helplessness and hopelessness. I have family in Israel, for example, and so on. So what can we do? Nothing at all. And I was reminded to that story of the starfish, you know, the little child who throws one starfish out at the other. It doesn't make sense. For that one, it does make sense. And I think storytelling does. And I heard something got stuck with me, what Martin Manasse told, that he had the same feeling and said, what can I do? I'm just a storyteller. And his sister, who is not, said, yeah, just by telling stories, no matter, they don't even need to be about peace or whatever, just by telling stories, by connecting. And I think that was what already was said here. We are doing something. So thank you, Laura, and thank you all. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to give up in some way, just surrender that, you know, I can change the whole situation. And part of why I love this story so much, and many Hindu stories are like this, where you have, you know, 3, 4, 5 past lives, you know, there was an elephant, and then the elephant was reborn as a king, and then the king was reborn, so on. So you get this sense of how things emerge, and I always found that of the greatest compassion, to have that as part of my diet as a human being. But yeah. Jeff, hi. Jeff the Bard.
Enjoyed the story a lot. As a bard, we're taught that one must remain neutral. And as I think about it, it seems to me that we live in a world where people talk at each other and not to each other. My job is to tell both sides stories. And there's an old story in a Celtic tradition of two clans that fought a great battle.
Could you lean a little towards your computer so we can hear you more?
Sure, my mic's on. Let me turn the volume up.
Thank you. We have in this.
There's an old story of two clans that fought a great battle. And at the end of the battle, only the two clan champions are still alive. And they're laying on the battlefield too wounded to move. And they spend the entire night talking to each other about their families. And in the morning, members of one of the clans shows up and they start to pick up their champion and take him back to get him healed. And they start to kill the other champion. And their champion says, "No, you can't kill him. He's my friend now." We need to stop talking at each other and talk to each other. And we need to remember as storytellers, and it's something that we learn in dog rescue, I may not be able to change the world, but I can change the world for one person. And we must never, ever lose track of the fact that we don't know what our stories, how they touch that individual. And we may not be able to bring peace to Gaza, but we may be
Can I
able to
just
bring
ask
peace
you
to one
really?
person.
I'm having a hard time hearing you because the pipe is making it's making a sound that. Could you just talk to us directly a little bit?
We may not be able to change the world,
Thank you.
but we
Yeah.
can change the world for a single person. We can
Thank
change
you
the
so
world.
much.
And that's what we need to focus on. We may not be able as storytellers to stop Gaza, to stop Ukraine, to stop the other wars, to make the American Congress grow up and act like adults, but we can change the world for one person. We can make a difference in one person's life. Years ago, I was at a festival. It was cold and rainy. I'd been there for 12 hours. My feet were cold and wet, and I hate that. I was on my way to the car, and two ladies stopped me. They wanted a story. So I asked them what kind of story they wanted. They said a funny story. So I told them a story. And they both laughed, and I started on my way. And one of the ladies called to me, and I thought, "Oh, please, I just want to go home and take a hot bath." And she came up, she said, "I thought you should know. My friend's husband died 3 weeks ago, and that's the first time she's been able to laugh." So we never know what the effect is our stories have on people, but they do have effect. So the key is, and I firmly believe if we ever want world peace, we have to keep telling stories.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to say anything? It's so nice to see all of you. Shukrito
Laura.
wrote here. Yes. Hi, Joel.
Hi. Sorry.
No, it's so nice to see you.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Laura, thank you for that beautiful weave. And I just wanted to tell you where your story brought me. After a storytelling event, someone came up to me and said, "I have to tell you about the best storyteller I've ever met." He talked about traveling to this foreign place, exotic small village. And he was in this place, and this man showed up and started to tell them a story of the place, and then started to talk about aliens who would come down and fabulous telling of this incredible place. And then he went back home, and he's in the house, and maybe a day later or something, the man comes by and knocks on his door and says, "Where's my bread?" And he realizes that this man, different houses, and the different houses take care of him, and he was in the house that was to give him the bread in the middle of the day. And the end of your story with the Buddha taking in all the children, feeding them, and spreading them across the community, just brought back that memory of the power of community to take in and hold even this man. So thank you.
Wow, thank you, Joel. I'm so glad you're here. Joel is a wonderful storyteller who really began with only telling personal stories, and I think you're really mixing it up now. But he also is a tremendous supporter, and it's so lovely to see you. Thank you. Now I'm just looking for our next person who's going to speak, so I don't have to tell you another story.
Alistair. Yes, Alistair.
Ah, Alistair.
What a wonderful, wonderful tale, and I think you're absolutely right that it's so relevant for our time.
Mm.
I'm reminded of the work of Thomas Hubel, Healing Ancestral Trauma, and you know, the story of Hariti Ma really drove it home for me that she was struggling with what had occurred to her in a past life. And whether you believe in past lives or whether you think it's just the ancestors, as Richard Rohr said, we all are carriers. We carry the wounds of our ancestors. And it's really up to us to choose how best to heal them. And of course, to do that, we have to heal ourselves. And so the healing of Hariti Ma, which comes through great suffering and pain, is actually healing her past life as well. And so we're not alone in this struggle, whatever struggle we're in personally, but we do need a community of support to continue the work that we do, which is, I believe, storytelling is heroic work. Thank you.
Thank you. I always feel that we concentrate on the literary text of the story, and the penetration is always who's telling the story and how it's being told. And that's a big responsibility for us. You know, we can allow ourselves very unconsciously to slip in a lot of biases and dislikes of things. It's not, you know, I'm not like a neutral person. I have to say, I have all of these things rising up in my mind all the time about what I think about left, right, and center. And but it's a really interesting task when you tell the story to try to discern what is the story and what is your manipulation of the story. So it's really fascinating, you know, interesting work, life work. Marina, am I saying your name correctly? Marina. You're muted. Thank you, Alistair. By the way, thank you. You're muted, Marina.
Yeah. Marina.
Marina.
Thank you very much. I'm Marina from Sweden. So, yeah, great stories, wonderful telling. And I say it touched me very much, but I can't really explain. I need to be with the story to, because it touches many things, but I can't formulate it yet. So, but suddenly the story reminded me, especially the compassionate part, it reminded me of the story of Inanna, when Father Enki is sending down the two flight men to bring Inanna's body back, when they sit in front of a Reshkigal, and she is mourning, and they are just mourning with her. They are mourning whatever she is complaining about. They are complaining the same for her, and she's not used to that. And suddenly she says, wow, I want to give you, who are you? Why are you complaining with me or mourning with me? No one has ever done that before. I want to give you a gift. And she wants to give them all the richness in the world that she owns. But they say, oh, we just want that dead body of Inanna. And finally she says, okay, so take that body. and then they put the life, the water of life, and the bread of life, and Inanna rises again. And then, of course, continue the story. But just this way of compassion, mourning with her, instead of everybody's getting afraid of her, or they don't want to be in contact with her with that, but they are, and that is, yeah, the story reminded me of that. And I also have, actually have a memory from a storytelling festival many years back, and it was a woman, a storyteller. It was a Jewish woman, young woman, and she had, something had woken up in her, a very rage. She didn't know how to handle it. It was also the stories that she carried from her parents, and she didn't know what to do with those stories. It was like a burden for her. And by some reason, I just felt to tell her this episode of the story. And it actually healed her. Suddenly, she got in contact with that rage, and she could let it go. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. Also makes me think about something that, I mean, what all of you have been saying, you know, Jeff and Martin and Sudha, everyone. It's Christopher and Majida, that there is that also maybe in this story of Inanna's restoration is the fact that, oh, you could receive all those riches, but if you repair the root of all the riches, which is the Great Mother, then abundance is restored at a kind of root. Am I saying this clearly? I'm so sorry that I feel like there's something about looking for the root cause of it all, addressing in our stories the root cause rather than just the obvious, you know, this, that, and the other, but looking beneath. That's a beautiful, thank you for that. You know, if we just keep going, give it a lot of space, out of this group will come far more wisdom than a single person could produce. It's really wonderful. Sydney, there you are. Hi. Anyone else want to say something? It's been so quiet. Nope, you've disappeared. Maybe you need a small break. I'm just looking at who's actually here. I love to see that. So many wonderful people. Well, I'm just going to, Carolyn, do you want to say something? You have this fantastic look on your face. I love, you know, all we can see is these little boxes of everyone's expression. It's so fabulous. But Karen, you've got this great expression. Poonam always has an expression that's pregnant with something. And there it comes. All right.
Thank you so much, Laura. Like every time you tell a story, you become the story, and I've seen it so many times. Another very powerful story has come from you, and I'd never heard about it. Though we have similar stories in our traditions, but this Harita Ma was something that I should say it had to come to me today. So that's how I'm here. Now, when you spoke about the demon and all those qualities, we all possess that. We have the goodness, we have the bad, the male, the female, everything we have within us. Now, it depends what we are feeding. And that's what is causing so much of strife all around. I wish the compassion that you talked about was what we could work more on. And through our stories, we could lead that path and reaching to the core, the problem, and then finding, the solutions. Sounds good, but I don't know how easy it would be because we are carrying all this for generations. But there is hope. through our stories, there is a lot of hope that can be passed on.
You're making me think that maybe there are two steps in this, and I don't know the whole process by any means, but one is just the recognition that generations were holding on to things that are like, I love that part of the story. And you can find this book of Miranda Shaw's, by the way. It's called The Buddhist Goddesses of India and Nepal. It's a wonderful study. And it's just the realization that we might be carrying things that we don't know about for generations can generate more interest in our watching our reactions and seeing. And then the other is there's a proverb from the Ashok, from the Turkish epic singer, that is, the voice is half the wisdom. And not the beautiful voice, but the authentic voice, the voice that is spoken truly from the body to others. So that's two of our tools that might inform us. Thank you so much, Poonam. I always see you, and you're like a whole memory of goodness and the warmth of your house and your generosity. Not to mention your beautiful storytelling. And your prayers and offerings at the beginning of festivals and events. So lovely. Shri Karuna, I have to call you just for your name.
So good to hear
Oh my
your
goodness.
You just can call me Shri. Everybody at Storytelling World calls me Shri.
We should tell all the other Americans in Swedish, and what is Shri?
Shri is goddess Lakshmi in South India, especially in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, everywhere. Most of the names are prefixed with Shri. And Karuna means kindness in Sanskrit. So that's the meaning of my name.
Woo! Oh, we could do that, like Prakriti. Now you have to tell us about your name.
It's nature.
My name is Nature.
Nature?
Yeah.
Ah, that covers everything. Beautiful. And Eric, where's my favorite commentary person? You don't want to say anything? Oh, you're muted, Eric.
Again, I'm going to say closing words. Is this the time for closing words for this session?
No, I'm going to tell one short story before we close, but I just want to make sure that everybody has spoken who would like to, and then you can say your closing. Is that okay, Eric?
Of course.
Yeah. I just tell you, this is like tossing out some more food. Many years ago, I was hired to write stories down for a project for a petroleum company. And I felt like I was working for the enemy. But they actually supported 34 schools throughout the world. So they wanted a story about water from each of these 34 cultures. And that was a task, of course. And then I found this one story that I loved. And then I somehow lost all my files. couldn't find this, couldn't find the project at all. And I was searching and I decided I had to find it. So I went through like, I don't know, like 80, 90 files. I couldn't find it. And I looked up on my bulletin board that I never looked at it. And it was just pinned right there. And it's been there the whole time. So this is, excuse me that I don't remember where I found it or anything like that. And it was just a printed out piece of it without any of my references, etc. But based on a story that had been told in Angola, Africa. And so there was a boy who was the son of a very poor man who exchanged him for an ox and indentured him with a very cruel uncle for 7 years, so that the boy just worked continuously. But at the end of 7 years, no one came for him. And he just accepted his fate, which he felt was really terrible, and he would continue just to be a slave for the rest of his life. But he began to have a dream, a repeated dream over and over again, and he ignored it, just a dream, you know. And the dream was that a river came to him, and a river spoke to him and told him that before dawn, if he went down to the water, he would see 3 packages floating down on the water, and he should take the small one that held a basket and let the other 2 go. And finally, after having this dream, one morning, instead of going to work, he went to the river, and first there came a huge sack of valuable cloth. And he thought, oh, to have this cloth, I could sell it at the market, I could wear it, this is incredible wealth and prestige. But he let it go because he'd had that dream over and over and over. Then came the second package, and he opened it, and in were knives and swords, and I mean, if it was modern story, be guns. And he thought, oh, I could like really not only get revenge, but I could be powerful. I could be an authority. I could have this incredible charisma of power. But he let it go because dream. Then this little basket floated by. Little basket. We picked it up. And inside there were plants and seeds and roots. And he took it. He had to go to work, and he was beaten because he was late, but he'd hidden it in the tall grass behind the little shack where he lived. So at night he took the basket. And there he saw the plants, roots, little seeds. What is this? But he began to dream every single night. And every night the river told him the healing power of each seed, of each root, of each plant. And when he finished working, having this knowledge, he went out and he began healing people who were ill with all kinds of illnesses. And he became renowned. And he made enough money that he bought 3 cows, and he bought his freedom. And it said that he became a great medicine person and traveled after that for the rest of his life. Eric, take it away.
Okay, well, as mentioned, I met Laura in the 70s, I guess, and I for my BA at New York University, I gave money to NYU, and they gave money to Laura, and I did independent studies with Laura, and then also with a master's degree, same thing, gave money to NYU, NYU gave money to Laura, and I was working in Laura's office one day in the 1980s, 40 years ago, And I said, Laura, there really should be an institute around you. And she said, yeah. But then 20 years later, when I landed in Chennai, and I felt it was time to start the World Storytelling Institute, the moment had come. And Laura is not officially legally connected to this World Storytelling Institute, but it's inspired by her from my part. I'm one of the founders of it. This Chennai Storytelling Festival is produced by the World Storytelling Institute. So it's all produced, it's all inspired by Laura.
And where's NYU?
NYU is there. My teachers in the arts were my mother and father. My mother, in her youth, she had her own dance company, modern dance. She was known as the Martha Graham of the Southwest because she taught at a college in Texas and had a dance company with her students. And later she became editor of Dance Magazine and such. So my mother introduced me to dance from an early age. My father was a playwright who sadly was never produced, but he wrote about music and drama and cinema for 42 years for 17 magazine. He interviewed every rock star and movie star, but he taught me about theater. And as a young teenager, my whole world was Shakespeare, Henrik Ibsen, August Strindberg, and the American playwrights Arthur Miller, no relation, Tennessee Williams, Eugene O'Neill. So I thought I was going to become a playwright, and I still might. But and I wrote a few plays as a teenager, but then I met Laura when I was 17 or 18, and I discovered storytelling, professional storytelling. And I was so fascinated by it, and it's so much easier than getting actors and a stage and lights and costumes and makeup. You can do it all in one. So since then, I've studied with Laura and been focused on storytelling. So my mother passed away 30 years ago. My father passed away 20 years ago. What to say? So in a few minutes now, I'm going to lead session 4 of an 8-session workshop on story composition, with the idea that it's about story, whether it's for storytelling or for drama or for cinema or for writing, just story in the abstract. So if you can, please stay around for that. But I just want to thank Laura. Oh, and speaking of tonight's topic in the story composition workshop is character, creating characters. And of course, the thought of Joseph Campbell has come up, the hero's journey. And Laura, I recall you telling me you worked a good deal with Joseph Campbell. Did he actually lead sessions in your loft?
No. But after he left Sarah Lawrence, I attended the first workshop that he had, which took place right across the street from me at a famous painter's loft. And I was just this young girl. And but there were amazing people in this workshop, including P.L. Travers and many Gurdjieffians and mythologists and anthropologists. And he went around asking everybody what they were doing. And I was just horrified that I was going to answer. I just dropped out of graduate school. And I said, I want to become a storyteller. And then Joe just perked up and he looked at me and he said, well, then you're going to have to spend the rest of your life discovering that all this world is a story. I just want to say that if anybody would like, I'm teaching classes and coaching, and I'm really excited about the things that I'm doing. So I put my website on, and if you would like to make a donation at all, it's not mandatory whatsoever. You can look on my website and go to PayPal or wherever. Or if you want to make a donation to keep supporting Eric in this festival and those who are working on it this year, there's quite a wonderful staff supporting the Chennai Storytelling Festival. Priyanka, did you want to say something before I see a little
Yes,
hand?
Laura. Yeah, hi. Actually, we have 4 minutes left for Eric's session, so I thought I'd take this as an opportunity to congratulate you. As always, you are a wonderful storyteller. I would like to share a reflection from the last story that you told. As all human beings, we talk about us being a combination of body, mind, and soul. So your story when you spoke about he receiving three baskets, the first one being full of clothes, the second one being full of all weapons, and the third one with roots and seeds. I don't know whether this analogy is applicable, but I thought, all the image consultancy that we get, all grooming, all bodily things, the clothes that we wear, and in the second level, the mind, the weapon, the skills, the competency, the way we speak, the way we cook, the way we handle things. But at the end, the medicinal power comes from the soul, the roots, the seeds that grows inside, and the love and empathy that we spread. And if we can really draw this analogy, I think this story can work wonders in the times that we are living right now, going beyond, because our dresses, the clothes and the weapons vary, but what remains intact is the roots and the seeds. Mm. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for that.
Thank you for thinking like a storyteller. Beautiful. Thank you. Eric, I hope you have a wonderful workshop. I have to go. Today is the Tibetan New Year, and I have to tell a story somewhere. But this year, by the way, is considered the year of the wood dragon. Wood is sort of basic and ordinary. Hopefully, it is a year in which we all get woody.
And
Basic.
a week from today, Laura is going to be leading a workshop here. The title of the workshop, get this, everybody, hold on. The nature of images in storytelling and weaving personal experience stories into the telling of traditional stories to create braided events. So I wish,
All that in an hour and a half.
yes. I wish a week would pass and we could have that right now. But what's more, that session is an hour and a half earlier than this one. So when Laura agreed to this, and it's going to begin 7:30 a.m. New York time. So you know what Laura said? She said, "Let's get out the French coffee." So I've been thinking about French coffee ever since then. So, okay, so thank you so much, Laura, and hope to see you very soon.
Yes, and I will be in and out of other sessions, but thank you all. Hello, Jean Hale. Lovely to see you. I want to say hello to everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. It is our listening that has such extreme resonance in the world. Love to you all. Thank you, Eric. Big smooch and hug to you.
Thank you. So now I'm going to stop recording.